The Payroll Analytics report pack in Business Objects looks at 13 months worth of your payroll transactions and then separates them out into a variety of different report tabs. So each of these is a different lens on all of that data, be it the month as a whole or a particular transaction date, looking at some trend analysis, or down at the costing pages where those things have been costed to in the GL. So you can use this pack to really narrow down on specific transactions that have happened either at one point in time over the course of the year or particular employees and see who has claimed this, when have they claimed this, and so on. If I have a look at the single month details, we've got our input controls up at the top. These allow us to filter the data that's on screen. So to start with, I can pick which payroll that I want to be having a look at, and then which month's worth of transactions I want to look at on screen as well. Further across, we can say either search for a specific element or elements. I can tick as many as I like. The payment value, so whether it's a benefit, a deduction, or gross pays. If I just pick payments, for example, filters what's there, so I can now see gross pay was just shy of £700,000. The fixed type is element specific. So when you set up pay elements in iTrent, they get tagged, if you like, with what type of element they are. So E's NI, for example, employees NI, ERS NI, employers NI. There are some more down here for sort of net pay, NIable pay. The ones that really come in handy are these pension ones. So you can have several different pension schemes, but if they're an employee pension contribution, they'll be tagged with Pen EE or Pen EES if it's a salary sacrifice element. So rather than selecting all of the different elements that make those up, just tick those and it's got all of your employees' pension contributions, for example. You can have postgraduate loans, student loans, and things on here. Some really, really useful ways of grouping elements together. For the transaction type, saying what type of transaction was it, so whether it came from permanent elements against your position details, temporary elements, so timesheet related details, or for retrospective details, say if you've got a pay award and 3 months worth of that were retrospective, you can separate those out to see this is just the retro element of that pay rise, for example. Once I've selected the details that I want to see, I can see the summary over here to say for the monthly payroll for this month, total payments in this case, about £700,000. But there's a drill hierarchy in here. So if I click on the name of the payroll, that then drills down to the pay elements. So I can now see not just gross pay was 700,000. Drilling down, I can see all of the pay elements that make up that total in descending order of cash value. So top of the tree, no surprises, it's salary, but then all the other elements that make up all that money. And then if I want, I can drill down further onto these elements to say, click on car allowance, and I can see all the employees who claimed a car allowance in that period. If I drill back up, I go back up to my list and I can keep having a look at any of these. So statutory maternity pay, for example, and see everybody who's claimed that in any particular month. So a really useful way of keeping track of which elements are being claimed and by whom for any particular month. For the single week, we can narrow down not just on the month as a whole to say in May what happened, but we can have a look at any specific transaction date. So if you have more than one pay run in a month, you can have a look at what specifically happened on this date and click on OK. Tab and filters work in exactly the same way as we saw before, so we can then drill down on here, apply filters up at the top. When it comes to looking at the trend analysis, if I go up here, I can select payroll or payrolls to have a look at all of those details and then see everything that's happened over the course of the whole year. So if I follow the same example we saw before and look at gross pay details, for example, I can see how has gross pay changed over the last 12 months. And then by drilling down on these details, I can see all of the elements that have been paid over the course of the whole year. And for each month going throughout the year, how much has been paid for each one. If I drill down on any of the elements, I can see when has car allowance been claimed at any point in the year. For specific people, when have they claimed it? When has it dropped off their record? When's it come back on? So really useful for keeping track of things like overtime spend, for example, and see when has overtime gone up, gone down, or who are my regular claimants of any of these payments. Really, really useful way of showing all of those details. We can see the same again for a weekly trend, just for your weekly payrolls, or for a quarterly trend, that's looking at a rolling 12 months. So the last 3 months will be one of the quarters, then the 3 months prior, and so on. The month-to-month variance tab is saying to pick any month and then another month as well and compare the two. This will start by comparing it for all of the elements that we have there, but what most people tend to use this for is looking at a comparison of net pay from one month to the next. So we can see overall what's the total for month A and month B and what's the difference between the two. The benefit of being able to select these months rather than just having it hard coded as this month and last month, it could be that one of these months was your bonus payment, for example, or you had a retrospective pay award. So it's not a very good month to compare to because net pay will obviously be different. So we can select an applicable month as, in inverted commas, a normal month's worth of payroll. Because I can then drill down on this, I can see this at employee level as well and see how has net pay changed between month A and month B per person. And deliberately included in here is their joining date and leaving date so that I can automatically ignore any joiners or leavers within this time frame. So looking April here, they only started at the end of April, which would go a long way to explaining why April's pay wasn't as high as it should have been. These people started in May, hence no pay in April for them. I could ignore those. It's these ones that I'm interested in, where people have been here for a while, but they do have either a cash or percentage difference in net pay. The ones in the middle are neither here nor there. It's the ones at the top and the bottom that I need to be concentrating on and have a look at their pay slip, see why has net pay changed for those people. Looking at pension contributions, I can apply a filter either for the payroll or for the pension scheme itself if I need to. And then for each scheme running down the left-hand side here, I can see the total employees' contributions, employers' contributions, and then the adjustment line is pensionable pay. For any of those, when I drill down onto that element, I can see all of the details by employee. So then I can see for this pension scheme, for this particular period, here are all my employees. And for each one, I'll see their personal reference number, their full name, and their national insurance number as my basic details. And then for every month in the year, the total employees' contributions in this case. I can export any of these details out to an Excel spreadsheet so that I've got a copy of them, and then do the same again, but for the employers and the pensionable pay if I need it. And I've got most of the details that I would need to start piecing my pension return together. The costing pages follow a similar format to the initial tabs that we looked at, where you can drill down on the payroll and the pay element. But instead here, what we're looking at is where have these been costed to in the general ledger. So when this gets set up, we'll need some details from you about how is your costing string put together. Is it the first 6 characters are your cost center, for example, and then the next 3 characters after that? That's how these will display on screen. So here it's the first 4 characters, and then I can drill down on here to start following the breadcrumbs backwards to see, I can see this in my GL for this costing string, and by drilling down on specific codes in here, see where have these details come from. So here's the full cost string that I'm interested in. Here is the pay element or elements that make up the details in here. And by drilling down onto that, I can see the employees who have had anything go into this area of the GL. And I can do that for any month, any quarter, or the month-to-month variance follows the same pattern as we saw before, whereas now rather than looking at net pay, for example, I'm looking at a difference for a specific cost center, seeing why has this cost center changed from month A to month B. And then, as we did before, drill down on those details to see why has something changed and which employees have affected that change. Looking at the dimension and multi-dimension analysis pages, this is where we can have a bit of a play around with our payroll data. So up at the top, our analytics measure is saying that I want to look at either the cash or the average cash value would probably be better in this case. And then I can split my details by an object of my choice. So this is looking at age band. I can have a look at that by gender instead, or by any of the other characteristics listed in there. So ethnicity, service length, position, so job title. And then if I look at, say, a specific element, I'll pick on net pay again. Because I've selected the average value and gender, we're now looking at the average net pay for men and women for every month going across the course of the year and seeing what is the average net pay for men and women across the business. And has that changed at all month on month going throughout the year? If we then look at the multi-dimension analysis, we can do the same again, but split by two different objects. So now we can look at, say, not just by gender, but by gender and by age band. And then again, apply these different objects to say, I want to look at the average value and I want to look at net pay. To say not just what's the difference between net pay for men and women, but does that change as they get older? Or by length of service, does that change for the longer they stay with the organization? The employee listing tab after that is essentially a payslip tab. So we can look up for a particular month or a particular employee what has been on their payslip. Or if you want to search by pay element, we'll be able to see anybody who has had a specific element appear on their payslip. And how often and how much. If we look at the employee listing multiple months tab, this then shows us everything that's been on somebody's payslip throughout the entire year. So a really, really useful way of seeing everything somebody's been paid all year round. Split by pay element again down the left-hand side, so we can see everything that's been on their payslip. So if we want to keep track of overtime claims or any contractual allowances and see when have they kicked in or when have they dropped off, it's a really useful way to just see it at a glance and see when have people been paid any particular elements. Last one on here is a gross to net report. So running down the left, we have all of our employees, and across the top, we have all of the pay elements everybody has been paid, split firstly by payments, then by deductions, and then finally over on the right-hand side will be benefits, including net pay. So all we have to do in here is select a payroll, select a particular period that we're interested in, and that's our gross to net report. We can export that out to an Excel spreadsheet, and we don't have to go away and build our own reports to do these things. The answer should be in here somewhere, but a very, very powerful pack to be able to use and really interrogate our payroll data. Once this has been installed, if you need any help with anything in here, you can log a call on the MHR service desk, and then somebody from the analytics team will be able to get back to you.